After months of rebuffing the speculation, owner Jerry Reinsdorf has made a major announcement regarding him eventually selling the team to billionaire Justin Ishbia. And let's discuss an emergency live episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Well, on this emergency show, I'm going to go over the announcement that Jerry Reinsdorf just made regarding the eventual succession plan, my reaction, and then I want those watching on the stream to give your reaction. And then for those listening post-live, whether it's on audio via Apple or Spotify, which make sure to subscribe there, or again, if you're just going to be watching this on YouTube later, you can email me your reaction at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com, and I can read reactions on another episode. Okay, so first, here is the official announcement. This is from the White Sox. It's basically all over X, formerly Twitter. I grabbed this from Chuck Carfine, but here's the announcement. The Chicago White Sox today announced that Jerry Reinsdorf and Justin Ishbia have reached a long-term investment agreement that establishes a framework for Ishbia to obtain a future controlling interest in the White Sox. As part of the agreement, Ishbia will make capital infusions to the White Sox as a limited partner in 2025 and 2026 that will be used to pay down existing debt and support ongoing team operations. The agreement provides that from 2029 to 2033, Reinsdorf will have the option to sell the controlling interest to Ishbia. After the 2034 season, Ishbia will have the option to acquire the controlling interest. In the event of any such future transaction, all limited partners of the Sox would have the opportunity to sell to Ishbia at that time. In addition to Justin Ishbia, his brother Matt Ishbia and father Jeff Ishbia will also be significant investors. There is no assurance that any such future transaction will occur, and in no event will such transaction take place before 2029. Moving on. Until such time, Reinsdorf family will continue to own the controlling interest in the White Sox. Reinsdorf, chairman of the White Sox since purchasing the franchise in 1981, remains the sole day-to-day decision maker of the club. Quote, having the incredible opportunity to own the Chicago White Sox and be part of Major League Baseball for nearly 50 years has been a life-changing experience, said Reinsdorf. I have always expressed my intent to operate the White Sox as long as I am able and remain committed to returning the franchise to the level of on-field success we all expect and desire, end quote. And then it goes over who kind of served as the, people who, were in the, who were the people, where the sausage gets made, who were the power brokers there. So here are my thoughts. And I saw it on CGI. I think it was Matt Crawford, really good White Sox fan follow. He put that on Twitter. It's like the CGI updated Return of the Jedi Star Wars celebration, where they went, remember, throughout the entire galaxy. Everybody's celebrating that the Emperor has been killed and saying that it is a great day to be a White Sox fan. As my guy, Marshall Wells, has just put into the chat. And I think that finally, and I want to know who got to Jerry, who got through to him to say, get out. It's time to stop owning a team, or at least put a succession plan on it, man. You're not going to live forever. I believe he just turned 89. And even then, giving himself a 5-year timeline, man, this guy really believes he controls his own, mortality. But the other thing that got me thinking is, first, how did the Fire basically calling dibs on the 78? And they literally did that in their social media announcement. They had their mascot. And I apologize, I'm not totally familiar with the Fire. It's been I stopped paying attention to the Fire, after they stopped being good in the 90s. I'll admit it. And I'm not a huge soccer fan. But, they literally called dibs on the 78 with their mascot taking a seat in there. And I wonder if that was what finally got Jerry to say, yeah, it's time to announce a succession plan. Because remember, one of his biggest, basically unofficial mouthpieces, Bob Nightingale of USA Today, went on 670 The Score and Every Daters. You might remember me doing a show about it, saying that he has no intention to sell to Justin Ishbia at any time. That Justin Ishbia keeps asking and asking and asking, and Jerry keeps saying no, 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 no. And the only reason why Justin didn't buy the Minnesota Twins was he didn't like the balance sheet. Come on. We all knew that you just don't abandon, you don't get that deep into your pursuit of owning a Major League Baseball team unless you're given some assurances that, hey, you can actually own a team in the third biggest market, even if you have to share it. And I also wonder why he decided to make this announcement, maybe probably being, in terms of having, why did he make this announcement now in terms of the 78 now going to the fire, that he definitely lost his leverage for taxpayer money to go towards the construction of the stadium that he was hoping to build on the 78. I mean, there is no way that you can actually go to the lawmakers and even just make your case to the taxpayers, the hardworking taxpayers of Illinois, and say, give me money, give me $1 billion so I can build my legacy ballpark. There's no way you can do that now with Joe Mansueto basically saying, I'm footing $750 million to build my stadium privately. I'll cut the check. Even though, folks, remember, it's a TIF district. $700 million, I believe, has been allotted, if I read the reports right. $700 million has been for infrastructure, which, again, you guys can jump into the comments and be like, how dare you? Infrastructure costs is fine use if you're going to help a private company like the White Sox build a stadium, because we're all going to eventually use those roads. If you want to put in another CTA line, for example, people are going to use it. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong is, hey, I also need you to cover basically the entire construction costs. No, the hardworking taxpayers of the state of Illinois should not have to burden that cost. My other reaction is, why not just sell controlling interest now? What is the point of sticking around? Because honestly, if the timeline is to be competitive by, say, 2027, if that timeline actually happens, that doesn't mean they're winning the World Series. Because to me, and again, this is just my reaction, I don't have any inside information, but I do believe, even though he's been a terrible owner since bringing Tony La Russa back in 2020 and basically, kneecapping last decade's rebuild, he does still want to win one more World Series. That has been one of the major motivating factors for him to also be involved. Excuse me one second. That is, it sounds like one of the reasons why he still wants to be involved. Obviously, he also says one of the reasons why he wants to be involved is because he's got nothing else to do in retirement. He's an octogenarian. He doesn't play bridge. He doesn't golf. He just owns a baseball team very badly. But if you still want one more shot at a World Series, you did it completely bleep backwards, because all you had to do is write the checks to cover the holes that your previous rebuild could not put together. You could have hired AJ Hinch, the right manager, instead of, having to satisfy this regret you had for firing Tony La Russa. You could have had it. You botched it. And again, there's no guarantee that even if everything goes to chalk, if we all believe that these prospects end up developing like we are all hoping for, and you could, get back to being competitive by 2027, it doesn't mean you're winning the World Series. October is random, folks. So I don't get why he still has to have, I got to have control. I got to stick around. I mean, do you not trust Justin Ishbia to negotiate a lease or build a new stadium? Is that what it is? Because notice, it's through 2029 when the lease runs out at right field. And that's the other thing that makes you wonder, what does this mean for the team's long-term plan for a stadium? Because the lease runs out in 2029. Do you extend the lease? I think that's probably what might happen. But if you're the Ishbias, are you looking at maybe building Comiskeyville? Because, folks, and I shared the aerial footage, I remember on X, formerly Twitter, had Rob Hart on, had the head bum in charge yesterday on, talking about you could build up around Bridgeport. Bridgeport is viable, despite what everybody thinks. You could build a very nice neighborhood around the ballpark in some of those parking lots. Yes, people would be willing, I think, to sacrifice tailgating. Do you go to the Reese Hospital site, where hopefully there's not much any nuclear left over, because, again, that's one of the areas where they developed the atom bomb, in that basement, if I recall reading. Do you go to Soldier Field? Do you go out to the Bears with Arlington Heights? Although I think going to the suburbs would be a huge gaffe and a huge mistake. But you just got to wonder, what are they going to do? And again, and it could be the Ishbia saying, look, we want to have some times behind the scenes to get all our ducks in the row before we take fully over. And if you are willing to still be the face and still take the brunt, fine. But I just don't get why there has to be this all the way out to 2034. Why not just do it now? And Jerry could still be a minority owner. I mean, heck, what I would have offered if I were me, if I had $1 billion, obviously in that, I would have said, Jerry, you know what? You are a generous guy. Why don't you be in charge of White Sox community charities? You can be the president, chairman of all that. I'll let you run that leg, and you can still have your owner's box. You just cannot be making the final decisions. That's it. All right. I want to get your reactions after the break and also outline my hopes for Justin Ishbia's owners. And that's after the break on this special emergency live reaction episode of Locked On White Sox. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. And whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live, and with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. The smart way to play is FanDuel's traditional money lines, spreads, and over-unders. But if you want to win big, it's the parlays, props, and futures. There's always the chance to at least double or even triple your money and win even more when you go with the parlays, props, and futures. For example, FanDuel is running a 4-leg same-game parlay involving Pascal Siakam, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton, and Jalen Williams, all scoring 25-plus points. That is at plus 3,915 last I checked. It probably could be even more by now. And if it hits, and you say you put $10 on it, you can win $391.55. Due to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to set up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. Shout out to all you everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. And if you can't get the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix. Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So I want your reactions. I'm going to put them up on the screen here. Let me get into that comments tab. All right, so I already shared my guy, Mr. Southside, Mashan. Well, I probably put your name, Mr. Walls, but he's a favorite of mine on social media. Always tagging me. Really appreciate it, man. All right, so we got Chi-Town here. Ironically, the Ishbias own the largest stake at 35%. Jerry Reinsdorf at 20%, Michael. So I feel like this was a foregone conclusion. Totally agree with you there. The guy Todd, it's important to note that this will happen. Okay, yeah, I did that. Thanks for being here. My baby boy loves listening to your voice. We call it. Oh, I appreciate that, Greg. Uncle Todd. And then May starts. Well, for the guy that just said so, at some point in the 2030s, the White Sox may start spending it. It's the light at the end of the tunnel, at least. I mean, we've been stuck in this dark age, even before last decade's rebuild. Think about that. How many times have the White Sox either had to go to the trade market and give up viable prospects just to get something decent because the owner was not willing to move forward with how spending was happening in Major League Baseball? And also, I want to get to, again, what are my expectations for Justin Ishbia? First, be a rich hobbyist. I mean, that's who you want owning, teams these days. You don't want them to be so passionate and crazy that they make terrible decisions or order terrible decisions. But at the same time, you want them to be able to know that, hey, if Manny Machado is out on the market, I'm going to pay him $300 million, not, well, I'll offer him $250 and then another $50 million in incentives to make it the biggest contract. When Manny Machado, for example, was like, why don't I just sign the contract where they're just going to give me all the money? Now where you're like, well, you have to earn the rest of this money. A guy that's going to go out and sign Bryce Harper. When elite talent reaches the free agency. And the other thing about free agency, what you want to use free agency for, and I'm a big believer in this, is yes, when you have Guys like Juan Soto on the market, you go and get them. Guys that are in their 20s, mid-20s, still at their peak performance years, spend the lavish amount of money. But otherwise, you should be using free agency to fill the gaps that your system cannot produce and find players that put you over the top. All right, I agree with you there, M. Wines 29. You don't want to have to wait 7 years. Hey, I fully agree with you. And I agree. Better strategy to cite his brother-in-law and hope that entices it. That is spot on. And think about that. Think about what the White Sox had to do to even try to get Manny Machado, and then they lowballed him. They still lowballed him. They signed his brother-in-law. But again, what you want to use free agency for is finding players that put you over the top, or again, fill in gaps that your farm system can't produce. Because the one great thing about investing in scouting and development, even though we don't like it and you have to wait for it, and I fully agree, but if you invest in scouting and development, and if you invest in your draft and development and your international free agency signing development, you not only get young players on the cheap, but you get young players in their prime performance years. And that's the thing that I would love every owner to say. You ever notice any owner loves to point out, well, yeah, we want to have a good young farm system because the players are cheap. Why not? You're worth billions, for example, if you're Justin Ishbia. And I'm not saying to spend your entire fortune on the team, because if you're going to do that, cure poverty then, for example. But on the flip side, it's because these guys are in their peak performance years. That's why, like even Steve Cohen of the New York Mets has said, I do want to have a good farm system. But you know what Steve Cohen has also said? I have the money that if I hopefully have that young farm system, I can bring in additional talent to enhance my roster and have depth. That's the other reason why you want to use free agency. Like you want to, Mike Tauchman, love having him on the team. But Mike Tauchman should be signed as a depth piece, not your starting right fielder. Because basically on the Dodgers, that's what he is. He's either a gap guy, that type of stuff. And I'm surprised no Phoenix Suns fans have jumped in yet. Because, are things going great for the Suns? No. But I've had, even on previous shows of discussing the Ishbia's ownership, they at least try. They take swings. And here's the difference, though, if you get something wrong in the NBA versus Major League Baseball. If you get something wrong in the NBA, it's usually an albatross. Because especially most of the time to get elite players, because they rarely get to free agency, you have to make big trades. And you have to trade away draft capital. And you can basically trade away a decade's worth of picks in the NBA. You can't do that in Major League Baseball. You can't even trade your first round pick. Now, they can slowly try to bleed you to death in terms of if you are signing all those free agents and you have to give them up, like what's happening to the Dodgers and the Yankees. And another reason why they still invest and they don't look at scouting and development as cost, but as, scouting and development being something that helps you produce your product. And that's what I would hope also Ishbia does. Heavy investments in that stuff and heavy investments in free agency. Basically, be a public trust. But in terms of construction rosters, in Major League Baseball, you can construct your roster through the draft, through international free agency, through trades that don't have to cost you draft picks. It may cost you prospects, but guess what? You keep getting a lot of draft picks too. You got 20 rounds of them. It's just a totally different roster construction in terms of what you need to do. Will this announcement mean the 78 is still on the table? Will the Ishbias put, to Auto Drive Media Group, I would say that they should foot the bill. I don't know how you go to the state legislatures now, to J.B. Pritzker, and say, give me $1 billion. When you can say Joe Mansueta is putting $650 million on the table. They're at least going, I would say this, they're at least going to have to cover $650 million of any cost. And maybe we don't know. I did try to reach out to Relay Midwest. They made no comment. I did not hear anything back from them. And the White Sox did announce that they're still pursuing, but that was yesterday. We are now in a whole new world. We're in a new world where there's at least a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's going to be weird too, because like, for example, in my lifetime, all I've ever known is Jerry Reinsdorf as the owner. It's going to be really interesting. For some of you that are obviously in the older demographic, hey, I appreciate you I'm not demographic shaming, but you guys, and I hear the stories, the Bill Veek days, yeah, the Vec days, Vec, Veek, however you want to pronounce it. Either way, those days were at least fun, it sounds like. Even the Allens at the end were great. You had the Southside Hitmen, and Reinsdorf had a run, and he's the epitome of either you die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And the other thing is, it does seem like everything's coming up White Sox, at least business-wise. As Mr. Walls points out, CHSN is finally going to be on Comcast tomorrow. You're going to have to pay $20 extra for the upper tier program. But my gosh, business is booming for the White Sox. But I agree. I love this. I'm sorry, I'm Wines. You were bringing it up. So at some point in the 2030s, the White Sox may start. I just love that. And I don't want to wait 7 years. But hey, if we got to wait 7 more years, it might be worth it. And again, there's a possibility that, who knows? Jerry may not live Jerry's not going to live for forever. Maybe something happens even sooner. And his estate, Michael Reinsdorf is like, hey, I'm fine being the minority owner. You take over. You take Dad's 20% and just control the team. Well, that wraps up this edition of a special live edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And again, I will be back tomorrow with a discussion with Gabe Ramirez of CHSN and the Chicago Fire's in-game host to discuss the Fire's baller move for calling dibs on the 78 and probably ruining Jerry Reinsdorf's hope of getting the taxpayers to foot the bill of building him a stadium on that land. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the team's future ownership announcement. You can leave them again on the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at TajDub or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Again, you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. I'd love to get some of your reaction and read it on future shows. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.